Losing the Boomer Blues, Part 9, Reading. Continuing from where we left off. Mary replied, "What a drag. We need to call AAA. I'm a member, so I'll call them, and they'll be here in no time." "Wow, déjà vu," replied Jane. "Remember, the same exact thing happened to us 50 years ago, after the free concert in the park on the day of the Love Pageant Rally." Mary replied, "The only difference between then and now is that I wasn't smart enough back then to call for a tow. I trusted a pothead to put air in my tire. He pumped it up, but there was a hole in it, and as I drove home, air escaped and I bent my rim. Makes me laugh now, but it wasn't funny back then." Pulling out her cell phone, she called AAA and requested a tow truck to come to their aid. As Lucy opened the car doors, she commented, "I should have checked that air pressure on the tire before I left home. Fred warned me that it looked low. I'm always in such a rush, and I don't know why." Holding the front car door open for Mary, Jane replied, "Yeah, me too. A flat tire finally slowed us down." Mary settled herself in the front seat with Lucy, and Jane sat in the back seat. Jane asked, "What better place to be stranded? I feel like time has stood still and we're 17 again. Remember how exciting it was around here in the 60s? Looking in a rearview mirror, Lucy replied, "Yeah, not something I'd ever forget." "Me either," replied Jane. "So much was happening back in the late 60s. I remember the Love Pageant Rally like it was yesterday. It was the first big hippie gathering. My father would have never allowed me to go if he would have known that it was a protest against the new law criminalizing LSD. As I recall, Bob had heard about it from Janis Joplin. She had posted a flyer on a telephone pole on Haight Street several days before the rally. Along with her band, she had performed for free that day in the park. Grass was just a zigzag roll away, and before long everyone was stoned and grooving to the music. We carried weed inside our purses. Bob and George rolled a joint, took a hit, and passed the doobie around to others enjoying the music. Ironically, none of us dropped acid that day." She pointed out the window at the open area in the park and said, "It all happened right here over 50 years ago." "We were so wild and free," replied Mary. "Doesn't seem that long ago to me, especially now, since we just revisited the 60s in the museum. We were lucky we met one another in high school back in the day. Washington High School was an excellent school. We excelled academically and had a blast in almost all our classes. The teachers were progressive and recognized the importance of bringing about social change by encouraging us to question and challenge laws in our society." "Remember our civics teacher?" asked Lucy. "Yes," replied Mary. "Mr. Radish was a trip. He taught us our rights under the Constitution and pointed out how the hippie movement and the civil rights movement were beginning to change social injustices. He was a cool teacher." Looking out the window thoughtfully, Lucy added, "Mr. August, the photography teacher, helped me unlock my hidden talent. He convinced me that I could interpret my photographs onto canvas. Before I knew it, I was in Mr. Smith's art class doing amazing watercolors." Jane replied, "I loved that photography class too. I took Mr. Williams' music class and never missed one band practice after school on Fridays. He taught me how to play the harmonica." Lucy stated, "I loved my sewing class with Mrs. Roberts. I enjoyed making my own patterns. It helped that you were my model, Mary." "Really?" "Yes. I took pictures of you wearing my creations and hung the photographs on my bedroom wall and dreamed of one day becoming a famous fashion designer. I often regret not pursuing a career in fashion design, but at the time I preferred painting. Oh my goodness, of course I remember. I'll never forget that beautiful prom dress you designed for me. Regardless of your media, you're a great artist because you love sharing your creativity. I still have the pencil drawing you made of me. You photographed me wearing shades, standing in front of the Golden Gate Bridge, and turned it into a work of art. It's still hanging in my bedroom." Glancing at her watch, she shook her head and rolled her eyes and said AAA must be busy. "They usually come within minutes." Jane, going with the flow and enjoying the trip down memory lane, said, "Don't freak out, Mary. Relax. They'll be here. What did you think of the museum exhibit?" Immediately, Mary answered, "I loved it." Then, in a reflective tone, she began sharing her thoughts about being a flower child during the Summer of Love. A rebellious shift had begun in San Francisco in 1966, and we were young artists expressing ourselves through our music, poetry, and painting. It wasn't all bright and sunny. Troubled teens were panhandling in the Haight, and runaways were turning to drugs and living on the streets. There was a dark side that soon forced an end to the hippie movement. It died out by late 1967, but it brought about positive social change in our city for many years to come. The positive effects have outweighed the negative ones, in my opinion. Jane added, "The hippie counterculture was made up of young people expressing themselves and doing their own thing. Remember when we traveled through the Haight with our paraphernalia, ready to perform at the drop of a hat? I carried my harmonica in my pocket. Lucy, you had your camera and flute strapped around your neck. And Mary, you had your tambourine attached to your belt. Bob toted his guitar. Fred slung his Martin over his shoulder. And George carried his bongos. We loved singing folk songs like The Eve of Destruction on the corner of Haight and Masonic. We'd play for hours as passers-by tossed coins into Bob's open guitar case." Lucy chimed in, "The Summer of Love was magical. We were among the flower children who gathered in the Haight expressing brotherly love, promoting equality and acceptance, preaching peace, not war, and handing out flowers as a gesture of unity." Mary replied, "Along with other hippies from the city and those who came from other parts of the country and even the world, we found solidarity in the movement. We rebelled against the restrictions the establishment put upon us, but more importantly, we struggled for change. Some hippies dropped out of society completely, but not us. We hung in there and fought for peace and freedom even after the movement." Jane remarked, "Gee, I missed those days when I'd give strangers a peace sign and they'd give it back to me." Lucy agreed, "Me too." The tow truck finally arrived, and without difficulty the driver changed Lucy's tire. Relieved, she drove out of Golden Gate Park. Jane had parked her car on Mary Street. Lucy dropped them both off and headed back to her place to tell Fred all about the Summer of Love experience and the flat tire sidewalk. While walking with Jane to her car, Mary stated, "Thanks to the exhibit, lots of beautiful memories are flooding into my mind and I don't even have my sunglasses to wear. It's wonderful recalling our youth. I remember the human being like it was yesterday. Allen Ginsberg spoke that day. The Grateful Dead and the Jefferson Airplane played for free in the park. It was San Francisco's first love-in." Jane replied, "Remember how much Bob and George dug our names? Every weekend they'd stash weed inside our Malcolm-made handbags, and we'd trip around in the Haight and hang out in Golden Gate Park. George and Bob often teased us about our combined names being a slang term for marijuana. Mary Jane was always the life of the party. Turning on, tuning in, and dropping out was a big part of the hippie rebellion, and we were right in the middle of it all." Mary hugged Jane and said, "The Summer of Love molded us into accepting and loving everyone. We've been through many ups and downs together. Granted, we don't always see eye to eye on things, but I know for sure when the chips are down, you're there for me and I'm here for you. You're my best friend. You're the sister I never had, which makes our bond stronger than just friends. Drive carefully and call me when you get home, so I know you're safe." "I will. Love you, Mary." "Ditto, but I love you more." We'll continue on later with Chapter 4. Thanks for coming. Ciao.